You ever look at those incredible worlds in a video game or a big blockbuster movie and just think, how on earth did they make that? It's this amazing mix of art and tech, right? Well, today we're going to map out that whole journey. We're talking from the very first click you make in the software all the way to having a pro-level portfolio. So what are we really talking about when we say Blender 3D modeling? Well, think of it like being a digital sculptor. It's the art of creating, well, everything you see in 3D, from the heroes and monsters in a game to the massive, sprawling cities in a movie. You're literally taking a blank digital space and building an entire world from scratch. Okay, and here's the part that might surprise you. You might think mastering something this complex would take years, right? Well, get this. This whole journey, from knowing absolutely nothing to being a really competent creator, it can all be mapped out over just 12 weeks. Yep, only 12 weeks. Think about that. In just 3 months, you could have this incredible, powerful new skill set built completely from the ground up. All right, so like with anything big, you gotta start with a solid foundation. So let's dive into part 1, building that foundation. This is all about mastering the absolute essentials. You kind of have to learn the basic language of 3D before you can start telling your own epic stories with it. This foundation is really built on 4 key pillars. First, you just gotta learn your way around the Blender interface. Think of it like moving into a new workshop and figuring out where all your tools are. Simple, but crucial. Then, you get into the fundamentals of modeling itself, making basic shapes, your cubes and spheres. After that, you level up to hard surface modeling. This is for all the man-made stuff, like cars, weapons, buildings, anything with sharp edges. And finally, you get to the really fun, artistic part, character sculpting. This is where you're basically working with digital clay, and your imagination is the only limit. Okay, so once that foundation is rock solid, you move on to the next phase. And this is where the real magic starts to happen. It's all about bringing your creations to life. We're talking about taking those plain, gray models and turning them into something dynamic and totally believable. And this happens in 3 really critical stages. First up is texturing and materials. This is basically the painting phase. You're giving your models realistic surfaces, the rough texture of wood, the shiny glint of metal. Next, you've got lighting and rendering. Here, you basically become a virtual cinematographer. You're setting the mood, you're guiding the viewer's eye. It's a huge part of the storytelling. And finally, the basics of animation. This is where you actually give your creation that spark of movement and make it move. So at this point, you can build something and make it move. That's awesome. But what's the difference between an amateur and a pro? What really separates them? Well, it all comes down to mastering the advanced techniques. Yeah, this is where you really start to level up. We're talking professional grade skills. First is rigging and character setup. This is way more than just simple animation. It's like building a digital skeleton and a whole muscle system inside your character, which allows for incredibly realistic movement. Then you dive into VFX particle systems. This is your toolkit for creating things like fire, smoke, rain, explosions, all that epic stuff. But look, having all these skills is one thing. Proving you have them is another. That's why the final, and maybe most important step, is creating portfolio projects. This is where you take everything you've learned and build finished, polished pieces that scream, "Hire me," to any potential employer. Okay, so we've mapped out all the skills you'll learn from the basics to the super advanced. Let's kind of zoom out for a second. Who is this whole journey really for? And where does it actually lead you? Well, this whole path is really laser focused on getting you ready for some of the coolest jobs in the creative industry. Think of it as your entry ticket. Maybe you want to be a dedicated 3D modeler, just focusing on creating amazing objects. Or maybe a game asset creator, building the actual pieces of interactive worlds. Or hey, maybe you want to be a VFX artist, the person who makes those mind-blowing scenes in movies happen. And this really shows you the whole scope of the journey, doesn't it? What you need to start is actually pretty simple. A decent computer, you'll want a good GPU, and of course, a creative mindset. That's it. But what you'll achieve, that's huge. You'll walk away with the real confidence to step right into the industry and take on professional projects. Because in the end, that's the real goal here. It's not just about learning how to use a piece of software or memorizing a few cool tricks. Nope. It's about a complete transformation. It's about getting the skills, the experience, and that rock-solid confidence you need to do professional work. So there you have it. We've laid out the entire roadmap, from that very first click all the way to a killer professional portfolio. It really all comes down to one simple but honestly pretty exciting question. Once you have these skills in your hands, what worlds will you create?